Thank you. That was so nice, Joe. I appreciate that so much. As Joe mentioned, my name is Anna. I am the director for the Maui Civil Defense Agency. I've been with Civil Defense for about 8 years or so, originally as the Plans and Operations Officer, and for the last 5 years as the administrator of the agency. I got into emergency management. I call myself the accidental emergency manager through my involvement with the Red Cross. When I moved to Maui from the Big Island, I had the opportunity to be the disaster coordinator for our Maui County Red Cross. And so that's where I got my first introduction into that. Over the years, we've just been continuing to build our community and our partnerships, because that's really where the strength of our preparedness and our ability to be resilient as a community lies. So I was asked specifically to talk about two things. The first thing I want to talk about, you heard Bobby say the word maka'ala earlier.
No need to worry about it.
Maka'ala is the word for be vigilant or being prepared. And we've taken that moniker, and that's what we've named our alert and notification system. So we used to be connected to the county website, and we still are, but what we've done now is we've gotten this new communications tool so that people can subscribe. And before, if you subscribe to Civil Defense notifications, you got every notification under the sun. Anything that the Red Cross, excuse me, anything that the Civil Defense Agency pushed out from the Weather Service was sent to everyone. So that was wind advisories, high surf notifications, tropical storm warnings, flash flood advisories, etc. But this new system allows you to subscribe to different types of alerts. So if you're not interested in surf notifications, perhaps, you can sign up just for wind notifications and tropical storm notifications. So it's much more customizable for you as a receiver. You won't feel bombarded with every single message. You can choose what it is that you would like to hear about. The other thing that we do with our Maka'ala system is we have the ability to push messages to geographic areas. So it is geocoded, and we can just go to the map, draw a circle or any type of polygon shape, and send a specific message to just the subscribers in that particular region. So we encourage everyone to register and sign up for Maka'ala. And at our table over here, Misty from our office is over here, and we have our laptop with us. So we can help you get registered to receive notifications directly to your phone, your smartphone if you like. That's the other thing about this one. We can do calls to landlines, we can do text to your smartphone, and we can also do email. So you can choose the ways that you want to have that coming to you. And in certain instances, for a tsunami warning, etc., we will choose all of them, but once you confirm that you've received the message, we won't continue to bombard your other devices as well. So some systems don't allow that, and then the system itself ends up taking down the notification system, sending out messages. So Maka'ala is our alert notification system. If you haven't already done so, again, I encourage you to visit our table, and we can help you get signed up either through your mobile device or with a laptop that we already have set up there. So let's talk a little bit about what we just experienced in terms of what is it that we need to prepare for. As you know, with the hurricanes that we had, the hurricane history, can I ask you to step just to the side? If you look at the slide there with Hawaii in the middle, you'll see what we've seen the last couple of years. Storms going all around us, somehow magically missing us. That's the mythology that we have. But when you look at this, there are a few storm tracks that do cross the Hawaiian Islands, and there are a couple of tropical storm and depressions and other storm systems that have impacted Maui County. Maybe not as a tropical storm strength, but they still have dumped water on us. We've seen them as Kona storms coming in with a lot of rain and a lot of high surf that's done damage to our islands. So although we haven't been hit directly by a major named storm, we're not immune to those possibilities. This is just an image that I captured from last week. This is what we were facing last week, right? With the two storms, Lester following right behind Madeline. So when those two storms were coming, what we then see in our community is nothing happened. So now they say, oh, big deal. Who cares about these storms out there? They somehow magically go around us. What happens for us though, and I feel like I'm preaching a little bit to the choir, but for those of you who are here, we're so grateful that you're here. one storm is not always going to be the same as the next storm that comes under it, right? The weather is one of the things that is most dynamic in our world. The changes and the very aspects that are going to drive a hurricane, that are going to fuel a hurricane, that are going to steer a hurricane, they're changing constantly. And so while the Weather Service is able to accurately predict, within a 24-hour time frame, when it's coming 2 to 3 days out, there's a little more uncertainty in those forecasts that they put out. So when we look at the cone of uncertainty, you often see that, right, when you're looking at the Weather Service, they have that kind of a cone, and then they have the line through the middle. A lot of people think that that cone is actually the hurricane itself. That cone just represents anywhere that the eye of the hurricane could pass with a 60% probability. So when you look at the cone, don't focus on that center line. I always look at the line that's closest to us and say, if the center were to be there, how big is that storm, and now is that going to impact us? So the Weather Service also has a product that they put out called wind probabilities, wind speed probabilities. And that takes into account how big is that storm, how big from the center of the storm are the winds extending. And our great partners at the Pacific Disaster Center make a terrific graphic for us that actually shows the radii, so we can see, oh wait, we are really in a high probability chance of getting hit by this storm. And I will tell you that Hurricane Lester was the one I think that had most people here the most concerned. That was the first time in my memory that we've ever, as a county, been put into a hurricane watch. We've been put into tropical storm watches and warnings, but that was the first time we'd gone into a hurricane watch. And the reason that it was concerning for us, that we were really looking at this like this could be the one, is it also had the highest probability, so the highest chance that we would get impacted by these winds that I have ever seen since I've lived in Maui. So we were at a 60% probability at one point in time, about 3 days before the storm actually came past us. So when you look at a 60% probability, and that's what the Weather Service is telling us, that's time to really be alert and get your preparations in order. And then we're just fortunate, as it came along, it did move to the north and to the east, and we saw those probabilities going down. And again, just very fortunate that the steering mechanisms for that particular hurricane guided it away from us. Hurricanes are just one, or tropical cyclones are just one of the hazards that we face. So we are focused not just on hurricanes. We're talking with the West Maui Taxpayers Association and the community at large about all the hazards that face us as a county. And so these are some of the other things that we have experienced here. 2 years ago, we had those high winds that really wreaked havoc, especially on the east side. The folks in Nahiku, I think, were without power for almost a week. Flash flooding is what we experience here more than anything in the state of Hawaii, flash floods. And then, obviously, wildfires. You folks here on the west side feel the brunt of that when the roads get closed and traffic is impassable, so you essentially get isolated, which is one of the things that we talked about. Tsunami, of course, is also one of our threats here, whether it be a locally generated tsunami or something that would be traveling across the Pacific, either from Chile or somewhere in Japan or anywhere around the Ring of Fire. So we have many different hazards that we face in Hawaii. And then, of course, we also have our man-made hazards. Those are things like terrorism, bioterrorism, plane crashes, etc. So within our own state, it's not just hurricanes. But what we have to remember is that those things that we talk about, making a plan, staying informed, building your kit, are going to benefit you regardless of what the hazard happens to be. So I do want to talk a little bit about tsunami. Some of you may have heard that our state conducted a study after the Japan tsunami in 2011. We realized that maybe the inputs that we were using to calculate run-ups and potential areas that need to be evacuated, maybe we should look at some more extreme scenarios. So we also, the State Civil Defense, the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency, in conjunction with the University of Hawaii, created another model using the same principles that we use to create our evacuation zones, but using a worst case scenario. Based on that, it's a very low probability occurrence, but it is something that could happen. A large 9.2, it's 9.2 I think is the threshold, 9.2 earthquake coming from the Aleutians was found to be the most dangerous for us and would cause run-up more than what we've seen in our normal evacuation scenarios. And so we've developed throughout the state a two-tier evacuation for tsunami. 99% of the time we're going to evacuate to the evacuation lines that we've always seen in our books. However, in those extreme tsunami scenarios, we have developed a secondary evacuation line. And if you can probably just barely see these up here, but there's two colors. But mostly, you're just going to evacuate to the normal one that we've updated in 2012. But in the case of this extreme tsunami or extreme event, we would call an evacuation to the extreme tsunami zone. So I would recommend for everyone to go to the Maui County website and check. You can, if you go to the website, and we can help you do that here as well. If you go to the website and type in your address, it will pinpoint for you whether you're in the tsunami evacuation zone and if you're in, not in the normal tsunami evacuation zone, but in the extreme tsunami evacuation zone. So those are the other things that we really encourage folks to do beforehand, is get informed about where you live, where you work, the places that you hang out, and map those places and find out if you're in the flood zone or what are the specific events that might be hazardous to you in those areas. So again, happy to help you do that, but we really want folks to just go to the mauicounty.gov civil defense website where we have links for all of this preparedness information, the maps that we have, etc. And there's just a photo of where we go. The other thing that I was asked to speak about specifically for the West Maui folks is the sheltering situation here for West Maui. As you know, during a tropical cyclone evacuation, for the most part we're evacuating to schools. As you've seen here, new schools haven't really been constructed, so the same infrastructure that we've had for so many years is still in place, but yet we've seen a boom in the population. So you see the population growing, and folks are not going to have additional shelter. So what are the things that we can do? First of all, we are working closely with our partners, the Red Cross, who are our primary shelter partners, to identify private facilities that might be able to be used for various types of shelter. Currently, though, for a tropical cyclone, it does still remain the schools as well as the, we've recently just added the Civic Center into that, but only certain areas of the Civic Center. So even though it's a large facility, it's not like it increases the capacity of our sheltering by that much. You heard also, I think, Miko talk about homes built before 1995. That's also a kind of a benchmark for us in terms of construction of homes. Homes built 1995 or after in Maui County were required to have hurricane clips. So if you're in a house that was built prior to that, we have information in terms of steps that you can take to fortify your own home, and that's what we recommend for people to do, is to add hurricane clips to their homes, add straps to their home to attach it to the ground so that you have what we'll call a continuous load path. And our friend Tim Waite from Simpson Strong Tie has a table over there, and they have been really innovative within the state of Hawaii, developing clips for our state and that work with our building codes. So he's also a resource here that you can talk to about how to strengthen your home. So that's what we encourage people to do first, is to look at your own structure and think about, first of all, are there things that I can do in order to strengthen my own house so that I can shelter in place? Secondly, if not, I would recommend looking at your neighbors and your friends and your family. When I was born in Guam, and in Guam, well, first of all, the houses are concrete and they have tropical cyclones all the time, as a matter of course, so the building construction is different than what we have here. But as a kid, we would take care of our own house as best we could, but then we would all take our evacuation stuff and we would go to one house. So it was the strongest house of my aunties and uncles, and we would all take our families there, we would all bring our supplies there. The kids, we would just play and do karaoke and stuff, but the grown-ups were doing things. My uncles and my dad would put up the boards on the windows, they had them pre-cut, it was ready to go. So that's the other thing that we need to think about, is if you can't shelter in place at your own house, who are your resources? Who is your ohana here? Who has the best house? And you guys can put it together and figure out, how do we really protect that structure? And we take our family and our evacuation things and go to that structure. That's what you want to do next if you cannot stay in your own home. And then obviously if you feel that your home or you don't have an alternate place to go, then you'll think about going to the public shelters. When you go to a public shelter, as you'll hear from our friends at the Red Cross, you are asked to bring all of your own things. Unlike on the mainland where people evacuate outside of the impacted area, that's not a luxury that we have. So we have to figure out a way to hunker down. So there are not resources enough for the entire population and visitors of the county at a public shelter. So when people evacuate to a public shelter, they are asked to bring their own evacuation kit. And for folks who are not used to that or who see images on the mainland of lots of cots and things that are already set up and things like that that are waiting for you, a hurricane evacuation shelter for us is really just that place of refuge to take shelter from the storm if you're not able to ride the storm out in your own or in another family member's home. So that's something else to consider. And then the other thing that we want to talk about is sheltering. What does that mean to you? It has different connotations for people. Like I said, people have an image of cots and blankets and food and other things that are distributed to you. And that's what would happen after the storm, when resources are able to come and we know that people are unable to return to their homes. So the pictures that people have in their mind about what a shelter is, I think sometimes don't match up with what the reality is for us in Hawaii. The other thing that we need to become aware of, because I don't know that everyone is always aware of this, is that during a tsunami, we just open areas that are evacuation areas. It's not, again, a shelter where we're opening doors and providing coffee and water and drinks and things like that. Our main concern is to make sure that people go inland and up out of the tsunami zone. I heard a lot of people during, the various evacuations that we've had to do in 2011 and again in 2012 about, they're on the highway and they're stuck in the traffic. The good news, especially on the south side, but over here too, is once you've made it to the highway, you're out of the evacuation area for the most part. So it might be inconvenient that you're sitting in your car or that you're not where you want to be at your final destination or that it's going to take you a long time to get there. But we have to all get into that mindset when it is a disaster. It's a disaster, people. It's a disaster for a reason. It's called a disaster. It's different than everyday expectations that we have. I mean, we already get impatient when the poly backs up and things like that. But what we need to put first when we're doing an evacuation is, am I out of harm's way? And with a tsunami scenario, we could be talking anywhere from, 30 minutes if it's coming from somewhere locally, but 4 hours to 12 hours perhaps if it's coming from somewhere in the Pacific Rim. So yes, it might take you a little while to get to your final destination, but have you reached yourself and gotten yourself out of the evacuation zone where the threat is? So if we can try to just reframe our thoughts or expectations during these times of disaster, I think it would help us all in terms of our anxiety and also just to be prepared and be able to manage what it is in terms of where we're going and how long it might take to get there, and just to keep that calmness about ourselves and keep our heads about us as we're going through these evacuations. Because these are scary things that happen, even if you're prepared for them. But what we like to talk to our school children about and others about is that if you know about what could happen, and if you think about it ahead of time and make your plans ahead of time, know what your actions are going to be, and you're just executing what it is that you've already thought of or planned out, then it makes it much easier for us on the stress level and just as a community, again, to do what we need to do in order to stay prepared. And I'll just close with this. We're so happy that the West Maui Taxpayers Association has kind of taken this on as their focus for this side. They've already done so many great things for the West Side, and in partnership with them and with the Pacific Disaster Center and also the National Guard, there's a program that Sharon is going to talk about in a little while, but there's a program called HARP. and it's all about building community resilience, and it's done at a community level. And so I thank the West Maui Taxpayers Association for taking on that project and being our sponsor for the West Side. So you'll be hearing a lot more about that as a community, and instead of me and my staff and civil defense sitting in the county building in Wailuku in the basement, those of you who've been there, writing your plans for you or trying to decide for you what the best courses of action are, this program really allows that to happen at the community level. People who live in this community, who are more familiar with the nuances of this community, are the ones who are going to drive the planning process with our support, obviously, and with our partnership. But the plans that are driven at a grassroots level then will have more ownership, and again will be more relevant and more meaningful to the people who they are for. So I do want to thank you folks for that. And I'll go ahead and close, Joe, and I think, who's up next?
Mark.
Okay. So if you need to sign up for Mahalo, our notification system, we have a setup over here at our table. And then we look forward to meeting you folks and working with you through the HARP program as we develop our plans for West Maui. Thank you.